in late 2008, we had the problem with piracy in the Gulf of Aden, and we were scheduled to deploy back to Bahrain, which I spent most of 2007. But they came to me and they said, okay, the European Union has stood up a task force that I'll talk a little bit about. And then they said that the U.S. Navy needs to get into the game here and counter piracy. So we stood up a coalition task force. Anytime I say coalition, it means broad services and not just the U.S. Navy. So we stood up in January of 2009. We stood up the coalition task force, which was 151. We'll talk a little bit of background right now about piracy in the Gulf of Aden. There's 1,000 theories on how it started and where it came from. But basically, the Somali coast in the Gulf of Aden is a very fertile fishing area. Fishermen were coming in from all over the world there and basically robbing the fishing grounds of the Somali coast. So what happens is the fishermen from Somalia go out and they say, okay, hey, they're taken away from us. So they went after small fishing vessels. They said, and they started to get ransoms for these small fishing vessels. So guess what? They said, let's go after big fish. So they went after big, oil tankers and you name the lot. So you've got a problem where you have fishing grounds, you have no Coast Guard, and what does that equal? That equals pirates. The two biggest things that supported the mission and pretty amazing in this counter-piracy business and anywhere in global security, the global world, is we had support of the United Nations. There were two resolutions there, and you can see the resolutions, that basically the Security Council said, go out there, get the pirates. But the most important one was 1846, that actually allowed us to go ashore and go after the pirates ashore or anything we need to do. When I was out there in 2007, we were stuck at 12.1 miles because we could not go into territorial waters. So now we have the authority, and this is, the success of this operation is the UN is sanctioned. I talked about the European Task Force. They stood up in December, and then we established the Combined Task Force 151. That operation was the only reason why we're there is to go after pirates in the Gulf of Aden. The European Task Force, their first charter was to go to support the World Food Program. We'll talk a little bit about that. The other thing that we'll talk about is the transit lane, and I'll explain that a little bit further, is we were able to take 30,000 ships that are transiting the Gulf of Aden and put them in an I-66 pattern of going east and west. What's the magnitude of the problem out there? We're talking about 30,000 vessels out there. And now this is the thing for you to think about. We've got 30,000 plus ships that are transiting through there. Less than 1% have been attacked. Last year, we had in 2009, we had just a little over 100 vessels attacked. This year so far, it's about 50. So what's the impact? Is it worth $1 billion to send warships, airplanes, and things out there to go after pirates? But the magnitude of the area, 1.1 million square miles of ocean. It's vast out there, 3 times the size of the Gulf of Mexico. The thing that you have to understand when everybody comes back to the issue of piracy, it's all about national security. In Title 10, the U.S. Code, the Navy has 3 basic missions, and one of them is to support the commerce of the United States. So that's one of the important reasons why we're out there. This is just some facts and figures. I'm not going to sit up here and drill into them. But like I said, in 2009, they had 47 successful attacks. If 3,000, just think about that, the oil tankers that go through the Suez Canal. So if you block the Gulf of Aden, the pirates are successful, you've got a problem. If you want to go around, it's 6,000 miles. And so 12% of the oils of what's coming out of the Gulf is going through the Gulf of Aden. The question that every time I do these lectures, I always get asked is the money that is going from the pirates going to funding terrorism. Al-Shabaab, I don't know if you're familiar with Al-Shabaab, but it's a very big clan in the Mogadishu area. And we have no signs right now that the money that is going from the pirates is funding terrorism in Somalia. Just a picture here. Why did Jesse James rob banks? Anybody know? That's right. You've heard my lecture before? No. I mean, this is where the transit areas are, right up there. As you can see, this is where the attacks are. Okay, and that's where the pirates go. They basically start in an area down by Basaso, which is the right up the tip of Puntland, and they get in these skiffs that are about 35, 40 feet. They have 2 Yamaha engines. It's always the same 2 Yamahas. They come up. It's about a 2-day transit. They sit in the transit lanes and they wait. And that's their standard mode of operation that's up there. The other success story in this operation is the coalition that is out there. I had the pleasure of hosting a Chinese admiral on board my ship, and I actually spent a day on board a Chinese warship. I don't think in the history of the United States Navy in the last 60 years have we had the opportunity to work with the Chinese, the Russians, Pakistan, Japan. Everybody is all out there in the same water space. When Admiral Mullen came up with his theory of a 1,000 ship Navy, this is a microcosm of what it should look like. Everybody is out there cooperating together, and it's a great success story. I talked a little bit, the slide that's up here in the top corner there, that's the transit lane. We got the merchant ships to come into the transit lane, so basically we could keep a watch out for them. And this was very important because if they spread all over the area of the Gulf of Aden, it's an extremely hard problem to chase them all out there. The slide that's down at the bottom, that's just a depiction. This is a seasonal sport, okay? Pirates it's like football and basketball out there. They wait till those seasons are over and then they go out to piracy. No, that's not it. Basically, what the monsoon seasons out there, if they're in these small skiffs, if there's waves and winds, guess what? They're not coming out there. So in the summertime, basically they're back in there. The big periods are in the fall and in the early winter time, and they come out there in droves. The problem is for us is one day they're pirates, one day they're smuggling people to Yemen, or they're out there smuggling drugs, or they're out there smuggling, or they could be, some of them are actually fishing out there. Okay, what are the pirate techniques, and what do they do? They're in small skiffs. They about 7 to 9 people in a skiff. So if you see them with RPGs, machine guns, if you see them with Thuraya radios, and we got a pretty indication they're out there pirate. They're not out fishing because there's no fishing nets and things like that. It's an organized event, but then again it's very unorganized. They send these guys out there. They say, okay, we want you to go out there, get a ship, and then come back. They take them down to the east coast of Africa to the pirate camps, and then the real gang comes on board the ships. Severe risk vessels. I mean, somebody says, how can a big ship out there be pirated? Well, the answer is if you're moving slow and you have a low freeboard, you're an excellent. I mean, it's a beacon out there saying, hey, come get me, come get me. So these are the type of vessels that we watch out for that are out there. Most of your Maersk Line ships that are, large container ships, the QE2, the Queen Mary, they're moving through there at 25, 30 knots. High freeboard, no problem whatsoever. So that's why, when you talk about the insurance companies and everything, they're looking at that and they're going to say, well, it's a low risk, okay? It's not going to happen. But if you have vessels like this that are low freeboard and are moving at slow speed, they're definitely at risk. Another success story is working with the maritime security centers to provide us the information of mariners that are coming through there. It's like a Notice to Mariners website. You can go on there, you can collect the information, you can get it. It's password protected, but you can get in there pretty easily. It talks about movements, who's out there, where are the pirated areas, and what are some of the techniques to avoid piracy. This is not the counter-piracy techniques are not very sophisticated, and they're very simple and things that you can do that are not very expensive. They have just put water over the side. They have security teams. There are a lot of options. I don't know if you're familiar in the press. About a month ago, the pirates actually went after a vessel called the Magellan Star, slow-moving, low freeboard, got pirated. Okay, the vessel itself had a strong room. And so what the crew did is basically they went inside the strong room, stayed there, locked the doors, and turned the engines off. Okay, so now you have a vessel that's adrift out there, and they put out a distress signal and say, hey, we're in the strong room, we're safe. Guess what? U.S. Marines come on board. Who's on board the ship? Okay? Pirates. In 6 minutes, the whole evolution was over with. And actually, it took 2 minutes for 90% of the pirates. One of the pirates decided to play tough and run around, but once the Marines got caught up with him, that was all over. So now there also is the Russian example of how to fight pirates, but they had the same situation. Went on board the ship, strong room, got the pirates, and they put them back into the skiff. And as you all know, it gets dark sometime, and they haven't seen those pirates lately. So. I know these slides might be kind of hard to see, but these are just some of the very simple techniques to avoid. If you're throwing water over the side, the skiff can't get alongside. So it's a very hard challenge. The one down here in the corner is just nets, and then the other one up in the top right-hand corner is just security teams. And I'll talk a little bit about security teams. I just bring this up. This was one vessel that was pirated and one vessel that was not, and a success story, and one that was not. The Longchamp that was pirated, I truly believe this was an inside job. Usually what happens when we were out there, you get a distress signal on bridge to bridge and say, I'm being attacked, the pirates are coming after me. And we would say it's the 30-minute golden rule. If we could get a ship there or an aircraft there, a helicopter there, we're pretty successful with warding off the pirates. In this case, within 10 minutes, we got another call back on the distress signal saying, hey, we're pirated and we are no longer, they've got control of us. 10 minutes, quick time like that. So in the Polaris, just a great example of what happened. They were under attack. They evaded them. They notified the coalition forces out there. We went after them. We sent a helicopter out there, apprehended the pirates, got in contact with the master of the ship and said, hey, we've got the suspected pirates. We lined them up here, and it was just like a lineup down here in Fairfax County Police Department. They said those were the guys. And we ended up taking these people down to Kenya for prosecution. Just some tactics that we used out there. The coalition forces, we basically stayed in the boxes because that's where the pirates, we used the zone defense. There's a lot of navies out there. The Russians are doing it, the Chinese are doing it, and they're doing convoys. The problem with convoys is you have to stay with the slowest vessel. So if they're doing 5, 6, 7 knots, okay, you're going to have to slow down. The other problem is what happens if a vessel gets pirated? Okay, they're going to say, well, I was under the protection of such and such navy. There's a possibility of legal ramifications. So basically, what we did is we just stood out there and stayed in the area. You can read this slide here, but the biggest problem that I had out there was the legal system. It was the dog chasing the car. Okay, we'd catch the pirates, and what do you do with them? A classic example that we had is a Dutch ship was hijacked, and the Danish Navy actually captured the pirates. So now you have two countries of interest. How do you get pirates back to the Netherlands that they're going to prosecute them and take them to off a Danish ship? It's a pretty you're not going to put them on land and drive them around in a cab. So what was worked out is basically the Danish ship went to Bahrain, and the agreement was with the Bahrainians that as soon as you can get them on KLM Flight 003 back to Amsterdam, we'll let you bring the ship in there. So one night at 10 o'clock, they bring the ship in, they go down to the Bahrainian airport, march them down to the airport, walk them up the gangway there, and the pilot says, well, who are these people? Oh, they're suspected pirates. What do you think the pilot said? Not on my plane. So now it's, you have an international incident in Bahrain where they have to back them out and send them back there. So it is an extremely complicated process. We have several pirates right now that are one is from the Maersk, Alabama, that's still awaiting trial in New York, and we have several that are awaiting trial in Norfolk, Virginia, for attacking, of all things, a U.S. Navy ship. So it's a very complicated issue out there. Just a couple things. How do you fight it? The coalition support, I talked about that. The maritime community has done a superb job of not only warning ships that are out there and just advising people to stay away from the area. There's a couple things. The NCIS agents, naval officers themselves are not policemen on the sea. I mean, we're basically hired waterfighters. So you have to have people who understand the law of the sea. UAVs, you're familiar with that, is a great tool. Something as simple as a Somali linguist to talk to these people out there. I tell the story about the Danish Navy. If you're going to bring a Somali linguist into the U.S. Navy, of course of all, you have to do a background investigation. Okay, so you're going to send somebody to Somalia to get a background investigation. Then you got to, talk to his neighbors. So 5 years later, you probably get him in there. So what did the Danish Navy do? They have as you all know, they have a problem with immigration. So they put an ad in the newspaper, interviewed a guy, and 2 weeks later, he's a lieutenant in the Danish Navy. Simple as that. So it's a great thing. Okay, keys to success. Is anybody in here working on their PhD? There's one that you could take on, the governance in Somalia. I think the whole conference is based on Middle East security. Well, here's one right here, and believe me, this is probably about the 10th or 15th lecture I've done, and nobody's raised their hand and said, I've got the answer. It is extremely complicated, clan-based societies. You've got pirates, you've got Al-Shabaab, you've got people coming in. I mean, it is, and the worst part about the whole thing is you have no government whatsoever. So it's just extremely hard. The coalition is supportive down there, and of course the maritime community. One of the ships used a security measure of Molotov cocktails and were throwing at the pirates, and the pirates were dodging everything, and so what do you think the pirates were afraid of? The fire? No. They actually were afraid of the broken glass because they all are barefoot out there. And put it in perspective, when we would take these pirates, suspected pirates, on board the ship, this is the first time in their life, A, they've had 3 meals a day, B, they've seen toilet paper, and in most cases have seen a doctor or a dentist. So it is a very repressive environment out there. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.